part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Chase Smith, founder and CEO of Press Play Podcast. You may have heard me on the Oranges Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast with Jeremy Powell, now wonderfully hosted by Holly Wetzel, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast with Sam Amico, or my own podcast, the Chase Smith Podcast. I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about a brand new subscription-based podcast we're offering this football season, the Press Play Sports Podcast. This premium podcast feed will send all of the sports podcasts offered on the Press Play Podcast Network to one central feed. Yes, you can still follow and subscribe to all of our individual shows for free on every podcast platform. But if you wanted to consolidate your podcast feed and listen to them all in one location, the Press Play Sports Podcast is for you. I'm talking the Oranges and Oranger Browns podcast with Holly Wetzel and Jeremy Powell, Red Guy and Rhoda, Sabol Brothers on the Baseline, Cavs on the Break, the Dennis Maniloff Show, the Ball Card Show, the Premium Fantasy Podcast, a Swing in a Tribe MLB podcast, and the Tim and Shipe Show, a college football podcast, all in one feed. All 9 of our sports shows curated into one single podcast feed. Out the door, you're looking at $5.36 a month after tax. That's $5.36, just about the cost of a drink at Starbucks. And this is only offered on Apple Podcasts. You can't get this anywhere else. It's an Apple Podcast exclusive. Just go to the search bar and search Press Play Sports. It'll come up and you can subscribe from there. We're excited to offer this consolidated, curated sports feed for you to enjoy. And as always, thank you so much for listening and your support.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm Scott Sabol.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Sabol. Thanks for joining us.
So Drew Allar is a quarterback, and he's a highly recruited quarterback. It's interesting because he's an athlete that's just starting out his career, whereas the people we've just talked to over the weeks have been coaches or players that have either already established themselves in the business of professional sports, or they've already had their careers and it's in their rearview mirror. So talking to Drew, it's going to be an interesting perspective.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is we're going full circle here in some of the early episodes we've had on this podcast, like Scott just said. Drew Allar, a young man out of Medina High School in northeastern Ohio, number 1 quarterback recruit out of the state of Ohio, and also a big recruit nationally too, for many different publications. So this is a young man who is committed to Penn State. We're going to talk to him about his recruiting process. We're also going to talk to him just in general about why he fits into Penn State, some of the challenges he's faced so far in this early season, but also now some recent news about Ohio State getting late in the game in the recruiting process for him as well. Will they be able to flip him? We'll wait and see. Not really sure, but Drew gives us his opinions and just talks about football in general, about college and what he's dealing with right now in high school. This is going to be an interesting conversation with a very bright and mature young man.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll get to know him as a person as well. You know, we can't forget about there's life outside of football. And especially when you're in high school, that's certainly a big deal. So our conversation with Drew Allar coming up right after this.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges Oranger Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges Oranger Browns podcast.
Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it, Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hi, this is Maria Gincola with Mindful MMJ Ohio. Did you know that medical marijuana has been legal in Ohio since 2016? If you have one of 25 qualifying medical conditions, you can obtain your medical marijuana card today. The most common conditions are chronic pain, including migraines and back or joint pain, PTSD, fibromyalgia, spinal cord disease or injury, and cancer. If you or someone you know is interested in learning more or to find out if you qualify, visit mindfulmmjohio.com and fill out the short pre-qualification form. The process of finding a physician, filling out paperwork, obtaining medical records, and scheduling an appointment seems like it would be a daunting process for most. But, lucky for you, Mindful MMJ Ohio will help you every step of the way to make the process quick and easy. In most cases, we can approve a qualified patient within 24 hours. And the visit is virtual, so you don't even have to leave home. So what are you waiting for? Visit mindfulmmjohio.com today. That's mindfulmmjohio.com. Let us help you be more mindful of your health and find a natural way to find relief from your symptoms.
Welcome back to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Hi again, everyone. John Sabol along with Scott Sabol. We have a very special guest, the youngest guest so far we've had on the network in our podcast. He is a senior quarterback for the Medina Bees here in Northeastern Ohio. Today's guest is Drew Allar. He is also the four-star recruit, number 1 quarterback in Ohio, the number 7 quarterback in the country, and the number 92 player overall. This according to 247 Sports, and he's a Penn State commit. Drew, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
So, Drew, let's set the stage first, because a lot of our listeners are from out of Ohio and out of Northeastern Ohio. So Medina, Ohio, it's a suburb of Cleveland and Akron, and the Medina Bees high school football team, it's a Division I program. And Drew, the team has started out extremely strong, very similar to how you guys finished up last year. You've had some big wins early on. First question for you, Drew, is talk to us about the Medina high school football program and what role it's played in your development.
Yeah, it's really been a big part of my development since my sophomore year, really, just with all my teammates and all the classmates in my grade, and then really the coaching staff developing us all since our freshman year, and just us bonding together really and picking up where we left off last year. It's really helped me a lot.
Drew, what's been the biggest challenge for you so far in this young senior season?
Probably just the teams we've been facing. We faced 4 really tough teams that are usually really good in their own conferences. And just how many different defenses we've seen. First game, it was all man coverage in our face. And then the next 2 games, they were kind of backed off, not bringing too much pressure. And then last game, it was a lot of mixing it up, bringing 4 or 5 or dropping back 8. So just seeing how many different defenses we've been presented as far as the offense, that's been the most challenging part. But it's also really good because we've seen everything, so we know how to attack everything.
And for anyone listening to this, maybe outside of the Northeastern Ohio region, or just, college football fans that love following recruits and maybe not familiar with Medina High School, who is your biggest rival and what makes them so tough?
I'd say our 3 biggest games year in and year out are Brunswick, just because they're a crosstown rival of ours. I've grown up with a lot of those kids over there, and they're super well coached. They're super similar to us in our offenses and defenses. And then I'd say Menor or Eds, and Eds are next to. Eds is a powerhouse around us, private school. Sophomore year, they killed us in the playoffs 73-35 or something like that. So they blew us out the first time. But last year, we were able to come back and kind of shock everyone around Northeast Ohio and upset them in the playoffs. And then Menor, they're always just a really strong team, really good athletes and players, and a really well-coached team that we play every year since they're in our conference.
So, Drew, I know you've played other sports. I know you played basketball and baseball, and right now you're focusing on football. When did you start playing quarterback? Did you play quarterback from day one, or was there a point at which you switched and you realized quarterback was your position?
First time I really started taking quarterback seriously was 8th grade and going into 9th grade, really. Other than that, growing up, I was always linebacker, defensive end, and a fullback and running back type. So really going into my freshman years when I started taking quarterback training really seriously.
So when did you know that quarterback could be your ticket to bigger things? And what I mean is, being recruited, going on to college, was there a game that you thought, boy, this is really the turning point, or was there something else?
I never really pictured any of it really. So it's been kind of like a surreal and crazy process at the same time. But I guess when I started recognizing that I had something that I could like be really good at was probably the end of my sophomore year is when I starting varsity when we played Brunswick and then we played Eds. So, I mean, I played pretty well in those games, even though Eds, they got the most of us, but I played pretty well in that game, and so did the receivers and offensive line. So I guess that's when I really realized that I could be really good.
Drew, take us back to last season, and when the recruiting process really picked up for you. What was that like for you? Some kids that I've talked to over years of covering high school and college sports, some kids love it. Some kids just flat out hate it. It's stressful. It can be pressure filled. I'm curious, what was your experience like?
Yeah, so my experience at first, it was kind of slow. So I got like going into my junior season, I had 4 offers from like Pitt, Akron, Central Michigan, and Toledo. And then really when we beat Eds is when it started to pick up too, because I think that's when Iowa State, Princeton, Penn State all offered in the same weekend really. So it kind of started off slow for me. And then once the season ended and the new year started is when it started really picking up for me with all the rest of the offers that I was given. So they came in spurts, I guess. So they all started piling up quickly at some points.
So, Drew, this past summer, I know you took a trip out to California, and I believe it was the Elite 11 finals.
Yeah.
Explain what that is exactly for listeners who don't know the process of recruiting and taking trips like this. Explain what it is exactly and what it was like to fly across the country into basically foreign territory. I mean, California seems like a world away, especially when you're a young man like yourself.
Oh, yeah. So the Elite 11, it's really just a group of 20 quarterbacks every year that get invited down to wherever the finals are. This year was in Los Angeles, like you said, but really it's where the top high school quarterbacks are given an opportunity to, like, I guess, put on their showcase their talents. Really, they've had a lot of NFL quarterbacks and a lot of great college quarterbacks go through there. Like this year, they had Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, who got drafted in the first round, that were finalists for them. So they definitely have built up a reputation in developing like some really good quarterbacks over the past like 20 years. I think they've been around, and really it was the first time I've ever been out west. So it was a super cool experience for me and my family because they got to tag along, but it also flew by really quick. Like we got up early in the morning and got back to the hotel late at night, and it was all just, it wasn't really just about football and playing quarterback. It was a lot of like leadership skills. It's probably the biggest thing I took away from it. And I was super grateful for that opportunity just because there were so many great quarterbacks there, and just to be a part of that group was super special.
Being a part of that group across the country, was that a little intimidating for you, especially someone who's never been in that part of the nation?
I guess I took it on as a challenge just because there hasn't been many quarterbacks from the Midwest and Ohio to be given that opportunity. So I guess I just went in there with the mentality that I just wanted to go out and prove myself that I belonged there.
As the process of being recruited has unfolded for you, Drew, what's the best advice you've been given, maybe by family, friends, coaches, maybe by college coaches too?
I guess the best advice I was given is just find the right fit and don't get too attached to like the name or the school, really. So when I got offers, I mean, I was super grateful for them, but if it wasn't a good fit for me, it didn't really matter what the school name was for me. So I was just going through my recruiting process. I looked for a program that could develop me on and off the field and also be a great fit for me academically. So I guess my biggest takeaway was just find a program that fits you.
So, Drew, who is, or this could be a single person or multiple people, role model? You know, who are your role models?
I'd probably say both my parents, just because of how much they've done for me and my whole family, really. So I really look up to them, and I'm super grateful for each one of them because they're always supporting my whole family. So it's super cool.
So, Drew, you had a lot of offers. You visited a lot of schools. What makes Penn State's program a fit for you?
Really just the relationships I was able to build with the whole coaching staff. I mean, Coach Franklin was one of the few head coaches that reached out to me as much as he did. And just having that relationship with Coach Franklin, being the head coach of a program, was super, super key to me, just because, sometimes the offensive coordinators or quarterback coaches or whatever position coach you're going to colleges aren't always going to be there for your whole career there. And just the stability that Coach Franklin has brought to that program with him being there. I think this is his 8th or 9th year coaching there, and he's there to stay. It was a big thing for me, just because I know I'm going to have the same head coach for the next 4 to 5 years. And really the other relationship that helped me pick Penn State was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, Coach Yursich. I started talking to him when he was at Texas this past season. And then obviously he got the new job up here at Penn State, and him being from Euclid, actually, it was just an easy connection to build with him. And he's just super fun and easy to talk to, really.
Drew, we'll talk more about Penn State here in a second, but I'm just curious, did Michigan try to recruit you at all?
Yeah, they did. I had an offer from Michigan, and they were pretty serious with me too.
Just curious, what made you turn them down?
I didn't think it would be it was nothing against them or anything like that, but I thought Penn State was one of the few staffs that I had constant communication with, and I could tell I was really wanted by the Penn State staff. So that was the biggest thing for me.
It's, of course, staying in the Big Ten. I know Ohio State recently started to recruit you, especially after Quinn Ewers reclassified to the 2021 class. So now they have an open spot for the 2022 class. Is it true that the Buckeyes recently offered you a scholarship?
Yeah, it is true.
Has that changed at all your commitment to Penn State?
No, it hasn't. I think I'm super happy with my choice at Penn State, and I don't think there's another school really that could offer me everything that Penn State could offer me. And I've been a part of this 2022 class for I don't know how long, since back in March, and we've really built it up. So I'm just super. I've became friends with a lot of the commits, and I'm just super close with them. So I don't see any reason why I would make a different decision.
Did it bother you, Drew, it took so long for your home state of Ohio State to take notice of you and to give you an offer?
Not really, because I knew they have a business decision. They need to find a quarterback that they think is going to take them to the next level. And obviously for growing up in Ohio, it's pretty cool to have an Ohio State offer. But if I never got the offer, it wouldn't have changed anything about them, just because they're looking at it from their standpoint and I'm looking at it from my standpoint, really.
So growing up in the Cleveland area, a lot of people are obviously Browns fans, some Ohio State in college. Who were your two teams that you grew up watching at the college and at the NFL level?
College, I grew up watching the Buckeyes, but growing up as a pro fan, I was all Cleveland, really. So I'm a huge Browns fan for a while now. My family has had season tickets forever, and I've been going to games probably since I was 6 or 7, really. So I'm glad to see the Browns be the team they are right now.
Yeah, only took them 20 years to finally be good. You don't even remember when they were really bad when they first came back. You probably weren't even born yet.
No.
Hey, Drew, don't feel bad, because my brother was a little kid the last time they were good, and he barely remembers that.
That's true.
So now that you're in the process, you know where you're going, Penn State, you're starting to build up some big numbers in high school, and you hope to do that in college as well. Do you model your game after any quarterback in the NFL, current quarterback or past quarterback? And if so, who and why?
I'd say I don't strictly model my game after one quarterback. I think the best thing to do as a young quarterback is just expose yourself to as many different things as you can. So I'd say the 3 biggest quarterbacks I take from, it's probably Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Aaron Rodgers, just because they're so well at doing different things. And if I can incorporate some of each skill set of theirs into my own game, it really benefit me. So those are the 3 quarterbacks I kind of watch a lot.
What does your little sister and grandparents think of all this that's been going on with you now for the last couple of years and going to be going to college soon?
I think it came out that all of us really pretty fast. It's been kind of a surreal experience for all of us, and I don't think any of us could really pictured it. So, they've been by my side this whole time, so I couldn't be more thankful for them either.
So, Drew, we got some basic questions for you. Okay, we're going to start. These are just questions that we ask everybody, and we're going to start this question with some entertainment. What's your favorite TV show that you're streaming, and your favorite video game?
TV show is probably The Office. I mean, I just like that show. It's pretty funny. I can just turn it on and laugh. So, and then video game, I'm probably Madden. So I'm a big Madden player.
Well, you put up like Madden like numbers recently with over 500 career passing yards in one game. That's pretty impressive. And of course, The Office. I'm a big Office guy too, man. Love me some Steve Carell and Rainn Wilson.
Yeah.
All right, on that same entertainment question, favorite movie?
I mean, I have a lot of movies that I really enjoy, but I really like Talladega Nights. I think it's a classic, so I like the movie a lot.
Shake and bake, baby.
Love that. All right, Drew, before I get to the question here, this is a question I just thought of, and I'm sure your dad's not going to like this, but all right. So let's say you and your dad go in the backyard, okay? And your dad has to guard you on you're the receiver. Can your dad guard you? Or are you going to burn him on a pass?
He can't guard me. He can't guard me anymore. Yeah, he might have been able to a couple years ago. But.
So, if you could meet one pro athlete, who would it be? It doesn't have to be football.
Like meet them?
Yeah, meet them. Yeah, if you had a chance to anybody as a pro athlete, meet them, talk to them, have dinner with them, just something real basic. Who would that be?
Probably Baker Mayfield, just because of how much he's done for the Browns this past 3 years. So it'd be pretty cool to meet him and be able to talk to him.
Drew, what do you like to do when you're not playing football or basketball or baseball with your buddies?
Really just hang out with all my friends that I've grown up with and just relax, really. It's really nice to just have some downtime and just be able to hang out with your friends that you've been growing up with these past years of my high school life. So I've just been hanging out with them as much as I can, really.
So we don't want to leave academics out of this because that's very important too. So what is your favorite subject in high school?
Right. This year, it's probably American Affairs.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I would not have guessed that. What's special about that?
I guess just learning about like the current state of like just foreign affairs with America and just the American government, really. I've always had like a passion or like just like an interest in learning about government, really.
So what about your major? What do you want to major in when you go to college?
I have no idea yet. So I'll probably go in undecided for the first semester and then hopefully I have something picked out by then.
Would you parlay your interest of government into like a political science degree, maybe?
I'm not really sure.
And finally, what is your favorite food?
Probably just a cheeseburger or some honey barbecue wings. I always get those when I go out to eat, so I really enjoy those.
Hey, you can't go wrong with that stuff, man.
I love it.
Scott, having a son who plays with Drew, that's like the typical high school kid meal these days, wings and burgers.
Tell me about it. And I always tell him to bring stuff home for me, and that just doesn't happen. It looks good on paper, but it never works. Never works out. Well, Drew, we want to thank you very much for joining us on our podcast. And I know you're really busy at practice. It's been hot and humid here the last couple of days, and I'm sure you got a lot of homework to do. So we want to thank you. We want to wish you, Drew, the best of luck this season as the season goes on here in Medina, and best of luck coming up here in your first year of college, which I can't believe is less than a year away.
Yeah, that's crazy, Drew. It's going to come here before you know it, and it'll be off to school. And we do want to thank you again. It's great to meet you. I'm going to be following you once you get to Penn State, and good luck. Stay healthy and safe the rest of the season.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Wow, Scott, what a humble and mature young man in Drew Allar, someone very grounded. You don't see that very often with 17, 18-year-old kids, seniors in high school. I don't know if I was like that when I was his age. This is a young man who's got a very bright future, great in the school, in the classroom, great on the football field. He's going to be going to a Division I school, verbally committing to Penn State. Can't sign yet. That's going to happen later on this year, I believe in December, when signing day is official. But man, I was blown away by that young man. Of course, you read a lot about him. You hear a lot about him, especially with high school football season now already underway in Ohio, just about how great of a player he is. But when you get to know him and you just hear about him as the person, when he talks about his family, that's no wonder why he had big interest from a lot of schools.
And he has a presence about him, and I always tell my kids, and I'm sure his parents have told him this, people develop an opinion about you within the first 20, 25 seconds. All right. Mm-hmm. That's just the way human nature is. And he has a presence about him that, you want to like him and he's a likable guy, and he has all the intangibles, looks like obviously he's a great football player, but he's a great person as well. And that's going to take him not only past, his first year at Penn State, but more than likely way down the line as well.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at like these college or high school kids. I've covered many of them in my times in television when I worked in West Virginia and then down here in Florida. You get to know these kids and cover them and really understand who they are, where they come from. And then when they go on into college, if they're lucky enough to play at a Division I level, whatever sport it is, we're talking football here, and you just get in a habit of just rooting for them and rooting for that school because you're rooting for that young man or that, young woman if she's playing a different sport. It's just a very interesting way of looking at college sports when you look at them, when you follow them. And for someone like you who's, knows him and follows these teams in schools, you see them at a younger age, and then they grow up and then they grow up and they mature some more. So it would be interesting for you, Scott, who know Drew way better than I do. I just met the young man, to really see him go to that next level. And you'll see what I mean, really to watch him grow on the field. And you're gonna be like, you know what? I remember when I knew you when you were in middle school or in high school.
And we're going to have him on the podcast in about probably like after the holidays next year, right after his freshman year. Mm-hmm. And then just follow him down the line. And it's going to be interesting just talking to him and then, realizing that, he's got a big future and a huge future ahead of him. And I'm looking forward to watching him and look forward to talking to him here in the next, in the months and hopefully years ahead.
I might be in the minority on this when it comes to people that cover these kids, but I always find it very interesting and intriguing what they go ahead and major in. When you have someone like a Drew Allar, who is a very young, mature, humble, smart kid, and he doesn't know what he wants to major in yet. A lot of kids don't, but when he goes to school, I always like to see, and you follow up them later, what did you end up going into? And I couldn't help but think of like the political science point because, his government.
His favorite class. I mean, his favorite class was basically around geopolitics, basically. And that's not the name of the class. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, okay, I like English, math, science, biology, whatever. No, it was that. And, especially in the era that we're in our country and around the world, to have a young man that's interested in that.
Yes.
That's in my opinion, that's a big deal.
But, if you really think about it, Scott, knowing a guy like him, who's a quarterback, I guess it kind of isn't that surprising.
That's
because
true.
A quarterback is so smart. He can read a defense. He has to think on his feet. He's the leader. Whatever. So now you're looking at like the political side, or you're looking at like government, social study type, history type,
it's
classes.
Big picture stuff. It's big picture, heady stuff.
Right. It's kind of similar to like a playbook in a way. You're I don't know what kind of a silly analogy that could be, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's going to be fun rooting for him. And someone who obviously roots for Ohio State, was rooting for Ohio State, and he grew up rooting for Ohio State. When they play Penn State, when he's on that team, I will definitely be rooting for Drew Allar because, man, that's I can't wait to see where he goes and how well he develops and matures in his career at college, because
he won't disappoint. That's for sure.
He definitely will not disappoint. And, he's got a great season so far. I know the season's young, and Medina looks to be poised to do some damage down the road and into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
We want to thank you and everyone for listening to this episode of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. And if you want to get in touch with us on the show, if you want to ever send us some questions about some of our guests that we're going to be doing some social interaction coming up here when we talk about more Browns football and some players coming up. You can tweet us at the show at Sabol Bros, at Scott Sabol FOX8, and at John_Sabol. Those are our three social media accounts on Twitter that you can reach out to us. And remember, you can follow us and subscribe to our podcast on Apple and Spotify. we appreciate all the listenership
Absolutely.
and subscriptions that you guys have been able to give to us so far here in the last 2 months that we've been doing this. So, Scotty, any last words before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've done enough damage today.
Sounds good. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Sabol Brothers on the Baseline Podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Take care.